AWS VPC Interview Questions and Answers. I am presenting you 20 AWS interview questions on the topic VPC. What is Amazon Virtual Private Cloud or Amazon VPC? VPC lets you provision a logically isolated section of Amazon Web Services, where you can launch AWS resources in a virtual network that you define. You have the complete control over your virtual networking environment, including a section of your IP address range, creation of subnets, and configuration of route tables and network gateways. You can also create a hardware virtual private network connection between your corporate data center and your VPC. You can easily customize the network configuration of your VPC. For example, you can create a public-facing subnet for your web servers that have access to the internet and place your backend systems such as database or application servers in a private-facing subnet with no internet access. So this is a simple architecture on VPC. The security group that you set up and associate with the instance allows traffic only through specific ports, locking down communication with the instance according to the rules that you specify, and using elastic IP address enables the instance in an otherwise private to be reached from the internet through an internet gateway. For example, it could act as a web server. What are the connectivity options for my VPC? You may connect your VPC to the internet through Internet Gateway. Internet Gateway is a highly available VPC component. Gateways established connections between your VPC network and the internet. Your corporate data center using a hardware VPN connection that is through Virtual Private Gateway. Both internet and your corporate data center utilizing both an internet gateway and a virtual private gateway. Other AWS services through internet gateway, NAT, virtual private gateway, or VPC endpoints. And you may connect your VPC to other VPCs also through VPC peering connections. I will be explaining you all the terms in the next interview questions. How do you connect my VPC to the internet? Amazon VPC supports the creation of Internet Gateway. This gateway enables the Amazon EC2 instances in the VPC to directly access the internet. There can be only one gateway associated with each VPC. These are the VPC components that provide the network address translation for the instances which have already assigned the public IP addresses. In the case of internet routable traffic, such a gateway provides a target in your VPC route tables. What are the components of VPC? The different components of VPC are subnet, route table, router, elastic IP, elastic network interface, internet gateway, customer gateway, VPN connection, virtual private gateway, VPC peering, VPC endpoints, and NAT gateway. So here is an architecture diagram of Amazon VPC's components. First, let me explain you about the component VPC. VPC or Virtual Private Cloud is a logically isolated virtual network. In the AWS cloud, you define a VPC's IP address space from the range you select. Then when I explain you about VPC subnet, it is a segment of VPC IP address range where you can place the groups of isolated resources. NAT gateway. A highly available managed network address translation service for your resources in a private subnet to access the internet. Hardware VPN connection. A hardware-based VPN connection between your Amazon VPC and your data center home network or co-location facility. Virtual private gateway. The Amazon VPC side of a VPN connection, the customer gateway is a customer side of VPN connection. Peering connection. A peering connection enables you to route traffic through private IP addresses between two peered VPCs. VPC endpoint for S3 enables the Amazon S3 access from within your PC without using an internet gateway or NAT and allows you to control the access using VPC endpoint policy. Next question is, what are internet gateways in VPC? An internet gateway is a highly available horizontally scaled VPC component. Gateways establish the coherent connections between your Amazon VPC network and the internet. There can be only one gateway associated with each VPC. These are the VPC components that provide network address translation for instances which have already assigned public IP addresses. In the case of internet routable traffic, such a gateway provides a target in your VPC route tables. What is a NAT device? A NAT device in your VPC or network address translation device will enable instances in the private subnet to trigger outbound IPv4 traffic to other AWS services, internet while hindering inbound traffic initiated on the internet. So when the traffic goes out to the internet, IP addresses get replaced by the NAT device's address, and when the response comes back to the instances, the device translates the address of instances back to the private IP addresses. AWS has two types of NAT devices: NAT instance and NAT gateway. Linux AMIs are configured to run on NAT instances. And also note that point, NAT does not support IPv6 as well. What are subnets in VPC? Subnets is a range of IP address in your VPC. It is possible to launch the resources of AWS into your desired subnet. For resources that need internet access, you can use a public subnet, whereas for the resources that don't need the internet, a private subnet is sufficient. The default subnet in your VPC can have a net mask value of 20 and can give around 4096 addresses per subnet. The subnet is always confined within a single availability zone, whereas VPC can span across the multiple zones. What is the default VPC? It's a logically isolated virtual network and gets created automatically in the AWS cloud. This is the default VPC. You can see this as soon as you open the VPC in AWS. It's a logically isolated virtual network that gets created automatically in AWS cloud for an account when the user makes use of Amazon EC2 resources for the first time. You can alter the components of the default VPC as per your need. There are several advantages of default VPC. A user can access high-level features such as different IPs, network interfaces without creating a separate VPC or launching instances. What is elastic load balancing and how does it affect VPC? Elastic load balancing is a load balancer service for AWS deployments. A load balancer divides the amount of work a computer has to do into more computers and gets it done faster. In the same way, elastic load balancer distributes the incoming application traffic into multiple targets like EC2 instances. There are 3 types of ELBs to ensure scalability, availability, and security for ensuring your applications as fault tolerant. The 3 types of elastic load balancing are classic, network, and application load balancers. Network and application load balancers can be used in conjunction with the VPC, and these can route traffics to targets within the VPCs. What is VPC peering? It's simply the network connection between 2 VPCs in the same network. It's possible to create a VPC peering connection between your own VPCs or VPC with another AWS account within the same region. It's not needed for AWS to break the existing VPC's infrastructure to enable VPC peering. There is no need of a special hardware for this purpose. The main reason behind such a connection is to facilitate data transfer across multiple VPNs spanning different AWS accounts. This type of peering is a one-to-one relationship wherein transitive connection is not supported. What are the differences between private, public, and elastic IP address? The private IP addresses are the IP address that are not accessible over the internet. If you want to communicate between the instances in the same network, private IPs are used. At an instance launching time, a private IP from subnet's IP address range and a DNS hostname is assigned to the instance. A private IP address remains associated with the network interface will get released only when the instance is terminated. When you launch a VPC instance, one public IP will be automatically assigned to the instance which is not associated with your AWS account. Every time you restart and stop the instance, AWS will allocate a new public IP to the instance. The main difference between public and elastic IP is that elastic IP is persistent. It will be associated with your AWS account until you terminate it. Anyhow, you can detach the elastic IP from one instance and attach the same IP to a different instance. Elastic IP is also accessible over the internet. Is there any limit to the number of VPCs, subnets, gateways, VPNs that we can create? So here is the chart for the limit. And yes, there is a limit, definitely a limit. Customers' gateways per region is 50. That is, customer gateways are allowed to 50 per region. One can create 50 VPN connections per region. Internet gateways per region is also set to 5. NAT gateways per availability zone is set to 5. Virtual private gateways per region is 5. And for per VPC, around 500 subnets are allowed. Network ACLs per VPC is 200. And 5 elastic IP addresses are allowed per region. Can you explain what is CIDR routing in VPC? This CIDR routing is classless interdomain routing. Is a set of Internet Protocol standards that are used to allocate IP addresses for networks and individual devices. With CIDR, a single IP address can be used to pick many unique IP addresses. Generally, a CIDR IP looks like a normal IP address, except there is a slash followed by a number in CIDR. This part is called IP network prefix. In VPC, CIDR block size can be from /16 to /28 in case of IPv4. When you are creating a VPC, you actually have to specify a range of IP address in the form of CIDR, just like 10.0.0.0/16. This CIDR is the primary CIDR block for your VPC. CIDR offers benefits of effective management of available IP addresses, space, and reduce the number of routing table entries. What are security groups in VPC? In VPC, the security group function is to manage the traffic for the instances. Instances can be single in a number or many. Actually, it does act as a virtual firewall that can control the inbound and outbound traffic of different EC2 instances. You can manually add rules to each security group to control the traffic within the associated instances. What is Network Access Control List? Network ACLs do the similar function of network security group in VPC. This controls inbound and outbound traffic in VPC. The main difference between network ACL and security group is that the latter's role is to act as a firewall for associated EC2 instance, whereas ACL's role is to serve the firewall job for associated subnets. Your VPC generates an ACL automatically by default and it's modifiable. Unlike the security group, the default network ACL allows all inbound and outbound traffic by default, and it's possible to associate an ACL with multiple subnets, but at a time only one subnet can be associated with a network ACL. You can also create your own custom ACL and it can be associated with a subnet. Such an ACL denies all types of inbound outbound traffic until you add rules to it. What are the functions of an Amazon VPC router? VPC router allows the EC2 instances within subnets to interact with Amazon EC2 instances in other subnets within the same VPC. Virtual private gateways, subnets, and internet gateways, etc., can also communicate with each other by means of VPC router. What are the differences between security groups and network ACLs? Security groups operates at instance level, network ACL operates at subnet level. Security group supports allow users only, network ACL supports allow rules and deny rules. Security group is stateful. It returns traffic in automatically allowed regardless of any rules. Network ACL is stateless. It returns traffic must be explicitly allowed by the rules. Security group, we evaluate all rules before deciding whether to allow traffic. Network ACL, we process rules in number order when deciding whether to allow traffic. Security group applies to an instance only. If someone specifies the security group when launching the instance or associates the security group with the instance later on. Network ACL automatically applies to all the instances in the subnets it's associated. What is classic link in VPC? If you want to connect an Amazon EC2 Classic instances to the VPC, you have to use a classic link. This works only within the same region and this makes use of private IP address. Its working is simple. You just have to enable classic link in your VPC account and associated a security group from VPC to EC2 classic instance. What is VPS or Virtual Private Server? Is the host server offered by web hosting companies like Bluehost and GoDaddy. So beginners who are trying to learn AWS VPC interview question will get confused with this question as the terms look similar VPS to VPN and to VPC. That's what I am having a question here. So this is a single host divided into multiple virtual units, each having an independent function. Each of these units is a virtual private servers which can work without depending on one another. You will get access to the complete physical server including the root access. So in case of VPC, its functions are similar to that of VPS, but its servers don't have a place in the right location. So what are the advantages of VPC and why it stands out from other private clouds? So the main features are improved security, maximum performance and complete control, cost efficiency, highly scalable private cloud services. Thank you for watching, and that's all in today's video. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe my channel, and all the best for your interviews.